let's talk Superfund, and you're going to send a letter.
Mm-hmm.
What will be in the letter? Why are you sending it? Let's go there, and then we'll talk Superfund.
Sure. So Lee Zeldin, who is now the appointed Environmental Protection Agency administrator for the White House, has stated that he is open to taking a second look at considering the Tijuana River Valley as a Superfund site designation. And what is a Superfund site? It's basically a process that this agency takes to look at how contaminated the soil and the area where there's legacy pollutants is, and how they can remediate and clean that up. So as you may remember, last year there was a collective effort with several different elected officials led by then Vice Chair Lawson Remer to petition the Environmental Protection Agency, the White House, to designate it, and we were rejected. The rejection was based on insufficient data, in my opinion. It was old data. And what we need is more leadership, more action from the White House, and we believe that this is a way to do that.
Do you have any idea what the actual money influx may be with the Superfund?
Yeah, so it's definitely putting skin in the game, because now if they assess, they go through this whole process, they're able to determine that there are pollutants of concern, legacy pollutants, then they have to remediate those. And it's a partnership between the federal and the state government to start that process. Unfortunately, it takes too long. Everything right now is taking too long for the pain and suffering and harm that our communities in South County are suffering. We have families that are extremely ill, children, elderly, adults, missed productivity. So in my opinion, we need solutions yesterday, not in 10, 15 years. Mm-hmm. But if this is a way to get the attention of the new administration, we're absolutely going to pursue it, and that's why I'm doing it.
You threw out 10, 15 years. Give me a scenario. What does it look like down the road 10, 15 years from now with a Superfund, without a Superfund?
So if this is not addressed properly in the way that it should, with the urgency and the emergency that it requires, we're going to see not just people falling ill in Imperial Beach, Nestor, San Isidro, Otay Mesa West. We're going to see people falling ill county-wide and across the border. The levels of pollutants that we have are extremely concerning. I was just talking to the scientists that were there embedded for weeks last summer, and they're finding anything and everything from PFAS to heavy metals to volatile organic and inorganic compounds to parasites even. So fungi. I mean, those aren't the pollutants that are taken into consideration necessarily under the Superfund site designation, but to me they're extremely concerning, because we now know that it's not just anecdotal reporting from our community. We now have evidence that people are reporting getting sick, conducted by a federal agency, which is the Centers for Disease Control, who was down here. So what does it look like in 10, 15 years? We're hopeful that it'll be clean and remediated, because if not, our entire economy, environment, and our public health are going to be devastated in 10 years. It's already devastated.
There is criticism to the Superfund idea. People point to plummeting property values the minute that's done. What is your response to some of the criticism?
Our property values have already plummeted. If you go on Zillow right now, you have tons of listings in the area. I've talked to realtors from Coronado, from Imperial Beach, from South San Diego. They have never seen as many listings as we see right now, because you can't, you can't escape it. We had a cleanup on Saturday in a community in Imperial Beach, and it was a beautiful Saturday. It was a beautiful, bright, sunny day, and all we could smell was the sewage. And we're about 4 miles away from the river. So people are feeling those impacts. Our economy is feeling the impact. So a Superfund designation, I think, in my opinion, puts the responsibility squarely where it should be, which is in our federal government under the agency that is tasked with protecting our environment.
Mm-hmm. Have you had any communication with the Trump administration?
We sent that letter. We sent a preliminary letter to now's Administrator Zeldin. We didn't get a response, but now that he's been confirmed, that's why we're sending one on Monday. We hope to have response. We'll see next week.
And aside from just saying Superfund, what would you like out of the Trump administration, all in all, with this
A
issue?
state of emergency, 100%. That should happen today. There should be a state of emergency declared at the state and federal level immediately, because we've had a lot of progress. We've talked a lot about the funding that has been fought for and secured to expand the sewage treatment plant on our side. The Mexican plant, San Antonio Los Buenos, coming online the end of this month on the Mexican side, but nobody is addressing the main source of pollution, which is the river itself. And the river continues to flow when it shouldn't. The river is flowing between 40 and 80 million gallons of raw, untreated residential and industrial wastewater that is not only contaminating our coast, our soil, but our air. And it's extremely concerning, and it's a ticking time bomb. It's a public health ticking time bomb, and nobody's taking it as seriously as they should. So that is why I continue to push for the state of emergency at both levels of government. And what would that do? It would help expedite solutions. Once you eliminate traditional mechanisms like NEPA reviews, environmental reviews, things can be done much faster in a more nimble way.
You talk about nobody's listening. It actually the reconstructed NAFTA under Trump gave the EPA $300 million. But then we have 4 years of the Biden administration. What is your assessment of how the money wasn't used? There isn't really a solution in place?
Yeah, and look, I've been very vocal. I don't care if you're a Republican, a Democrat, independent. If you're dragging your feet and and by doing so, you're harming our communities in South County, then that's unacceptable. So that money was secured. I do believe it was because the pressures that our lawsuits brought forward, right? It took a long time for them to be able to put the money where it should have been. It had to go from EPA to the International Boundary and Water Commission. That took 4 years, to your point, under the Biden administration. Then our congressional delegation and all of us advocated for additional funding once we found out that the treatment plant was in an incredible state of disrepair because of the disinvestment and because of the deferred maintenance years, decades. We had in the sedimentation tanks not water or treatment going on, but soil and plants growing out of it, solids. So it was in a terrible shape. The money has now been secured. That's starting the process. The contracts have gone out and been secured. Commissioner Heener has actually successfully shortened the timeline from 7 years now to 5, but it's 5 years too long. So our president should have declared the state of emergency, and President Biden, and now we're asking President Trump to do the same because it's too long. Our families cannot continue to live in the situation they're living in.
What is this letter going to say in that sense of, Mr. President, this needs to happen? Just tell
we
us
now
that.
have empirical evidence from 4 different universities, from the leading researchers in the world in atmospheric chemistry, telling us, sounding the alarm, the red alert, this is really bad, people are getting sick. Now we have the Centers for Disease Control report, the CASPER assessment. They came in October, did their whole methodology. Lo and behold, everything that the community has been telling us for 2 years is true, and then some. There are additional layers of concern, not just physical, but psychological as well. There's very high levels of depression. There's very high levels of hopelessness because, as you know, South County is a working class community. A lot of people cannot afford to leave even if they wanted to. We know the rollout of the air purifiers has been frankly terrible. We've been in need of the air filter since last August, and some families are just starting to get them. We're now in end of February. So that's what I'm going to tell the president is this is what's happening. This is a public health emergency. We have the empirical evidence to show that we are suffering. We are, United States citizens that are suffering, and we need his help.